extremely problematic to come from government side and propose what's seemingly almost the same as status quo. Let's just assume a few things with their policy because they weren't clear to begin with. We'll assume two things. Number one, that this grading system will come with ramifications or effects if it's simple enough. Second, what this grading system will also come about, we assume, is that it's going to come in a way that students evaluate their teachers in a score basis, be it 1 to 5, or they can also write comments on their teachers, whether they hate them or not. Those are kind of evaluation that we are expecting the students to actually go with. What we want to argue here is very simple. We will prove to you, and I'll go ahead and we're going to take. So this Harvard's education system as a whole. We'll do that by two main arguments from my speech. Number one, I'm going to talk about the capability to decide and whether students can in fact decide on this. Second, I'm going to talk about the learning process and why this harms the learning process. But before that, the three rebuttals. Number one, their mechanism. Not only is the idea fundamentally flawed and not clear, but we think we inherently see a contradiction. The contradiction is, they've conceded to a certain extent that students are immature, that it's subjective between students, and therefore you should not only give them the right to grade, and you send them to the Parent-Teacher Association. Given that you already allow this form of check and balance, it means they are conceding that these students cannot grade their teachers and are not capable of doing it. On one level, it's already flawed. But the second response to that, and the second problem with that mechanism, is that we think it happens anyway, and the existing check and balances are sufficient to tackle it in a way that's not antagonistic, and in a way that's not going to be directly affected to that particular teacher, because there's no direct ramification of that examination or that grading systems. Ramifications like perception or ramifications like the labels we put on teachers, whether they're good or bad, those ramifications are something we cannot stand for and something we don't want. So two things we want to rebut that. First is the idea that you push teachers to appease to their students. Basically, they wanted to say that, well, they'll be noticed by teachers want to know their students, all this under one argument to begin with. Three responses. Number one, we think there's already inherent interest for teachers to do so. Because under status quo, there's a need for teachers to remain and maintain that relationship between their students and themselves. The way that's the best way to appeal to students. Every teacher knows this. But the direct other response to this is that we think it's counterproductive. If indeed you are saying that you want teachers to appease to their students, why can't this come in a way that's natural and responsive to an idea that humans are doing it sincerely? That's something we think would never exist on their side, because there's always be an artificial incentive on the back of their head, and that artificial incentive is, I don't want to be marked 1 or 0 by my particular teacher. That's why we think it's bad. The difference between status quo's alternatives and right now is very simple. The difference is that there's no direct ramification to that very evaluation. But more than that, it's because students are not the only arbiter when it comes to deciding. When it comes to a grading system, when it comes to status quo, there are things like PTA or talk to teachers or counselors or even the law and the teachers are that bad. Those alternatives revolve around the fact that there are parents or there are other officials above those teachers to decide whether those teachers are capable or not. That's the difference. Because when it comes to a grading system, it's objectively to the students, and it's objectively to the students argue later why it's particularly harmful and why it's bad. But next, they argued ideas. They wanted to tell us that the best way for students to forward their ideas is only if you have this grading system. We know that's wrong. We are okay with students sending out ideas. We are okay with students giving suggestions on how to actually improve the learning process. What we are against is the objective grading to it. It's a difference. Because we can go for memorandums or whatever you want to send to the teachers to say, well, I want you to do this for me. And the teachers can consider. But it doesn't mean that you have to have a grading system for that to exist. That's a problem-solution mismatch. So first, what about capability? I'll take your view.
Okay, now the problem which we see right now is that you can have these things, but the students don't know about it. So when you have this system, the students know about it, and they get more actively take part.
Oh, so they've conceded that it works. That means that all they have to do now is inform the students that it exists. Haha, it's problem solved. So number one, what is the capability to grade of students? We think their policy impurifies ratification of teachers. Because when you analyze students, they can be children. And when they are children, their rational calculus are extremely mined by a lot of human culpabilities. Culpabilities like emotions, culpabilities like feelings, like perception. All these ideas and all these elements within the student wrongly subjects this teacher to the mercy of irrationality. Because you allow for teachers to appeal to something that you can never objectify. And you can never ever understand, you can never ever appease to everyone because of not only the subjectivity, but because students are just inherently biased to one thing. They are biased to them feeling happy and not necessarily for understanding the need for discipline and the need for teachers to be strict in certain areas of their education. What we think the problem with that argument and the problem with capability here is that given they can't have the capability to decide and evaluate maturely, this compromises the ability for teachers to have a right to work in a stable working environment. Because what happens here, that you will affect their ability to carry out their job the way they seem is necessary, and we think that is all created by the capability argument and the problem because students just can't evaluate teachers in the right way. The right way we want to push for is this. It's right when you have officials, be it psychologists if you want to check and balance to consider students, or be it the Ministry of Education to evaluate teachers in a way which is holistic and a way which is not mired by only emotions, but also understanding and consideration as to why teachers do certain decisions. Second argument, how does this compromise the educational environment? We think on the first level, this exacerbates the misconception or the fun class mentality. When you allow teachers to consider that the only way to appeal to students is to have a fun class, is to not be boring or to not teach history for too long. We think the problem with that, the harms that comes to it, is that you hamper the purpose of education because you disallow teachers to strike a balance. The thing about status quo, and what we want to characterize about status quo, is that there's already a balance. The balance is there's PTA to evaluate teachers. At the same time, there are also the educational grading systems to ensure that teachers perform well. Given that balance, with their policy, you only tip that balance to a state where teachers are forced to appease their students more than their education and more than education. And we think education is much more important than students feeling fun or students feeling happy in their class, although that's vital. But we think there must always be that form of balance, and balance can only be created with our side. But secondly, given that we think that the problem with that is that because they are surrounded with children, the direct mental effect on teachers is that when they are teaching in class, they only consider their students, because in that psychological environment, it oppresses them to consider their students only and make them appease their children, appease to students even more. But the second level to this is that we think this hampers students-teacher relationship. When you encapsulate the community of schools within an atmosphere of hypocrisy, when you allow for teachers to artificially appeal to their students without any need or any sincere incentive, we think that is what harms the very nature of relationships which are supposed to be sincere and which we are supposed to promote within a school environment. Thank you.